"Why are you still afraid?" he asked gently. Then the mafia boss lit a cigarette beside her abuser's car. The smell of stale grease and burnt coffee hung in the air, thick as the cigarette smoke clinging to the vinyl booths. This was my life. The 8-hour, 9-hour, sometimes 12-hour shift at the Red Brook Grill, a place clinging to the edge of a city that had forgotten it. My name is Leah Mendez. I am 24 years old, but most days I felt like I was rusty, just flaking away into nothing. I kept my head down. That was the first rule. Keep your head down. Keep your voice soft. Make yourself small. I was a ghost in a cheap polyester uniform, refilling cups for truckers who looked through me and sliding plates of gray meatloaf in front of old men who mumbled their thanks at the table. Invisibility was survival. Any attention, any notice at all, felt like a spotlight that burned my skin. The grill at 1 a.m. was a special kind of lonely. It was just me, Rosa sweating over the grill in the back, and the hum of the fluorescent lights that always seemed to be on the verge of dying. I wiped down the counter for the 10th time, the damp rag just pushing the grime around in circles. My feet ached, a deep, bony pain that had become as familiar as my own name. My apron pocket vibrated. My heart didn't just jump. It seized. A cold, metallic fist closed around my lungs. I froze, my hand gripping the rag. It vibrated again. A text or a call. He knew I was working. "Leah, you got table 4, Rosa called from the kitchen window, her voice sharp over the sizzle of bacon. "On it," I managed to call back, my voice sounding thin. I slipped my phone out. The screen was bright in the dim diner. 1 missed call, 1 new voicemail. The name on the screen was just D. I deleted his full name months ago, as if that would make him disappear. Derek. My thumb hovered over the voicemail icon. I didn't need to listen. I knew the cadence. It would start low, almost sweet. "Hey, Lee, just thinking about you." Then the edge would creep in. "You think you're too good to answer me now? You think you can just hide out in that shithole diner?" And then the venom. "You can't hide. Leah, you can't ever hide from me." A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, the unlistened to message feeling like a small, hot coal against my hip. I grabbed a menu and walked toward table 4, forcing my feet to move, forcing a smile that felt like cracking plastic. He was out there. I knew it. Some nights, I'd see his busted-up blue sedan parked across the street, just sitting in the shadows of the boarded-up laundromat. He'd just watch. He was always careful. He knew the police patrols. He knew exactly how far to push, how to stay just on the right side of the law so that if a cop did roll by, he was just a guy in a car, listening to the radio. He hadn't touched me in 6 months, not since I'd finally gotten the courage to pack a bag and slip out of the apartment while he was passed out. But his shadow was longer than his reach. Table 4 was a man I'd never seen before. That was the first thing that set my nerves on edge. New faces were trouble, but this man, he was different. He wasn't one of the usual late-night stragglers. He was wearing a suit, not a flashy, cheap suit, but a dark, perfectly tailored coat of charcoal wool that probably cost more than my last 3 months' rent. His white shirt was pristine, his dark hair cut sharp and clean. He was looking out the window when I walked up, his profile stark against the greasy glass. He looked to be in his early 30s. Maybe. There was a stillness to him that was absolute. "Welcome to the grill. Can I get you started with something to drink?" My voice was a rehearsed whisper. He turned his head slowly. His eyes met mine. They were dark, almost black, and incredibly intense. He wasn't looking through me. He was looking at me. And I felt a sudden, terrifying urge to bolt. It felt like he could see everything, the cheap concealer, the exhaustion, the fear. "Coffee," he said. His voice was low, smooth, with an edge of gravel. Black. "Coming right up." I hurried away, my skin prickling. I grabbed a mug, my hand shaking just slightly, and filled it from the pot. When I came back, I set it down on the table, along with a napkin and a spoon. "Here you go." As I placed the mug down, my wrist turned, and the cuff of my uniform shirt, worn thin from 100 washes, rode up an inch, just an inch, but it was enough. A faded, sickly bruise, the color of old lemons and violets, was stark against my skin. It was the ghost of a fingerprint grip where Derek had grabbed me in the parking lot 2 weeks ago when I'd refused to talk to him. The man's eyes flicked down. Just a fraction of a second, he saw it. His gaze lingered on the mark, his expression unreadable, and then, just as quickly, moved back to the coffee cup, said nothing. He didn't offer sympathy, or ask if I was okay, or give me that pitying look I hated. He just noted it, like a fact. "Thank you," he said politely, lifting the cup. I nodded, unable to speak, and fled to the relative safety of the counter. I tried to ignore him, but his presence filled the diner. He just sat there, sipping his coffee, watching the room. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't read a paper. He just watched. Then I saw it. The familiar, rusted-out shape of Derek's sedan. It rolled past the diner windows, slowly, like a shark circling. My breath hitched. I ducked behind the coffee machine, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I prayed he hadn't seen me. I prayed he'd just keep driving. The car slowed at the corner, idling under the sputtering streetlight. I chanced to look at the man in the booth. He was looking out the window, his gaze fixed on Derek's car. There was no surprise in his expression, just a quiet, cold recognition. His jaw was set, and a muscle ticked just once. He knew that car. Or maybe, I thought with a shiver, he knew the man inside it. Derek's car finally sped off, tires squealing faintly on the damp pavement. The man in the suit looked down at his cup. He took another sip, as if nothing had happened. When I went back to the kitchen, Rosa was scraping grease into a bucket. She was broad-shouldered, strong, and the only person in this city who knew my story. She didn't look up. "He was out there again, wasn't he?" she asked. Her voice was flat. I just nodded, leaning against the stainless steel prep table. The metal was cold through my thin shirt. "Leah, mija," she said, finally turning to me, her dark eyes fierce. "This is getting worse. You have to go to the cops. Again. You have to file another report." A bitter, hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat. "What's the point, Rosa? What is the actual point? I went last time. Remember? When he broke my car window? I sat there for 3 hours. And then, who comes out to take my statement? Officer Voss, Derek's uncle." The memory made me sick, the way he'd smiled at me, all paternal concern. "Now, Leah," he'd said, patting my hand, "are you sure you saw Derek? He's a good kid. Love you a lot. Maybe you were just upset and you got confused, this kind of thing. It's he said, she said, it just makes a mess for everyone." My statement disappeared. The report was never filed. Derek got a call from his uncle, and that night he showed up at my old apartment, drunk and furious that I'd tried to ruin his life. That was the night he'd broken my wrist. "That pendejo," Rosa muttered, slamming the scraper down. "That is not love. Leah, that is a cage." "I know," I whispered, "but the cops, they're just the men who build the cage. They're not going to let me out." Rosa sighed, the fight going out of her. She knew I was right. In Red Brook City, the system was a locked door, and men like Derek's uncle held the key. The man in the suit finished his coffee, left a $10 bill on the table for a $2 cup, and walked out. He nodded at me as he left, a brief, formal gesture. I watched him go, feeling a strange mix of relief and something else. Loss. That night, the walk home was worse than usual. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every car that slowed down made my heart leap into my throat. My apartment building was a decaying brick tenement that smelled like damp drywall and old cabbage. I hurried up the 3 flights of stairs, my keys clutched in my fist, one key poking out between my fingers, the way my dad had taught me. I turned the corner to my landing, and I stopped. They were on my welcome mat, a spray of cheap, wilting carnations, the kind from the corner bodega, their red and white heads drooping. My stomach turned to ice. My hands started to shake so violently I could barely see. Tucked into the green paper was a small, folded note. I didn't want to touch it, I didn't want to read it, but I had to. I nudged it open with the toe of my sneaker. 5 words, scrawled in Derek's familiar, angry print. I see who you're with now. Who? Who was I with? My mind scrambled. I hadn't spoken to a man in... The man in the suit. He'd seen him. He'd seen a man in a suit pay attention to me. And his poisoned, possessive mind had twisted it into this. He thought the stranger was my new... He thought... Oh, God. The flowers weren't a gift. They were a message. I can get to you. I can get inside your building. I can stand right here at your door. You are not safe anywhere. I kicked the flowers. They scattered across the grimy linoleum. I fumbled for my key, my whole body trembling, and practically fell into my apartment, slamming the door and locking the deadbolt, sliding the chain across. I leaned against the wood, gasping for air, as if I'd just run a marathon. He was closing in. The walls were closing in. The next night, I almost called in sick. I couldn't face the walk. I couldn't face the diner, but the rent was due, and being broke was just another kind of trap. So I went. I wore a thick, long-sleeved shirt under my uniform, even though it was warm in the kitchen. I felt like I needed armor. Every customer who walked through the door made me jump. I spilled coffee, dropped a plate. Rosa shot me with worried looks, but said nothing. And then, at 11 o'clock, he was there. The man in the suit, Nico. He walked in, his presence silencing the low murmur of the diner for a second, and took the exact same booth. My heart was hammered. Was he the source of this? Was he the one Derek was angry about? Coffee, he said, not even looking at the menu. Black. I nodded, my mouth dry. I went to the machine, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the pot. I walked back to his table, focusing on the cup, just trying to pour the dark liquid without making a mess. It was no use. The hot coffee sloshed, splashing over the rim and onto the saucer. I flinched, pulling back, a small, mortified sound escaping me. I'm sorry. I expected him to be angry, or at least annoyed. Instead, a hand covered mine. His skin was warm, his grip firm but incredibly, impossibly gentle. He didn't grab it. He just steadied me. His hand was large, enveloping mine. His thumb resting on my pulse point, he held my hand and the pot and guided it until the cup was full. It's all right, he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate right through my skin. He let go. I snatched my hand back like I'd been burned, my face flushing hot with embarrassment. Sorry, I whispered again, and I fled. He stayed. This time, he didn't just have coffee. He ordered a plate of eggs, which he ate slowly, methodically. He read a thin, leather-bound book. He stayed for hours. He was just there, a silent, solid fixture in the corner of my eye. He wasn't watching me, not overtly, but I felt his presence like a shield. When my shift ended at 2 a.m, I was a bundle of raw nerves. I punched out, grabbed my thin jacket from the hook, and braced myself for the walk. When I pushed through the kitchen doors, he was standing by the front entrance, holding it open for me. The cold night air washed over my face. It's late, he said. It wasn't a question. I'll walk you to the bus stop. The protest rose in my throat immediately. You don't have to do that. I hated it. I hated feeling weak, needing a man to protect me from another man. It was the same cycle, the same trap. I know, he said. He didn't move from the door, just held it, waiting. He wasn't asking. He was stating a fact. I looked past him, into the dark street. The 3 blocks to the bus stop suddenly felt like 3 miles, populated by every shadow, every dark alley, and the memory of those dead flowers on my mat, the creeping violation of it, was still fresh. I ducked my head, clutching my jacket tighter, and walked past him into the night. Fine. He fell into step beside me. He was tall, and I had to walk quickly to keep up, but he shortened his stride just slightly. We didn't talk. The only sounds were our footsteps on the cracked pavement and the distant wail of a siren. He walked on the outside, closer to the street. He was a solid, silent presence, and for the first time I couldn't remember how long the fear in my chest loosened its grip. Just a little. The bus stop's orange light flickered overhead. The bus was nowhere in sight. This happened for 3 nights. It became a strange, quiet ritual. He would be there when I finished. He would walk me to the bus. We never spoke more than a few words. The bus is late. Cold tonight. I stopped protesting. A part of me, the part that was so tired of being afraid, had started to rely on it. On the 4th night, the air was sharp with the first real bite of late October. We were standing under the sputtering light, the street empty and silent, the bus was late. And then I heard them, footsteps, fast, angry, slapping the pavement. "Leah!" My blood turned to ice. I didn't have to look. I knew that voice. It was my living nightmare. "Leah, what the hell is this?" Derek, he was stepping out from the alley across the street. His face a mask of rage in the dim light. His eyes were wild, fixed on me, and then on the man beside me. "Who the hell is this, Leah?" he spat, stalking toward us. "This the rich bastard you're screwing now, huh?" "Derek, stop," I whispered, backing up, my body instinctively trying to shrink. "Go away!" "Go away?" He laughed, a short, ugly bark. He lunged, closing the distance in 2 strides, and his hand clamped down on my arm. His fingers dug into the muscle, right over the old bruise, and the pain was sharp, electric. "You don't tell me to go away. You're coming with me." He yanked. I stumbled, a cry of panic tearing from my throat. "No, Derek, stop. You're hurting me." And then, he was just there. Nico. The man beside me. He hadn't seemed to move, but suddenly he was a wall between us. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't shoved, hadn't done anything violent. He just appeared. He was a wall of dark wool and absolute, terrifying silence. Derek, who had always seemed so big, so overpowering, suddenly looked small. He was forced to look up at Nico. Derek's hand was still on my arm, but his grip had slackened. Nico just looked down at him. His eyes were flat, dead, colder than the October wind. It was the most frightening thing I had ever seen. "Let her go," Nico said. His voice was quiet. It was not a request, it was a judgment. All of Derek's drunken bravado evaporated. It vanished, sucked out of him by the sheer, cold presence of the man in front of him. Derek saw something in those eyes that I couldn't, something that made his knuckles go white and his face pale. He shoved me away, and I stumbled back against the bus stop pole. "Whatever, man," Derek stammered, holding his hands up. "She's not worth it, crazy bitch." He turned and half walked, half ran down the street, disappearing back into the shadows he'd come from. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand, leaning against the cold metal pole. My arm throbbed where he'd grabbed it. In the distance, I could see the headlights of the bus, cutting through the dark. I looked at this man, this stranger who had just made Derek Voss, my personal monster, run like a beaten dog. "Who are you?" My voice was a breath, barely audible. Nico turned to me. The deadness was gone from his eyes, replaced by something else, tiredness. He looked at Derek's retreating back, his expression grim, someone who doesn't like men like him. The bus doors hissed open at the curb, bathing us in yellow light. "Wait," he said. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit coat. He pulled out, not a wallet, not a gun, but a small, cheap-looking burner phone, a prepaid brick. He pressed it into my hand. My fingers were so numb I could barely hold it. "Take this." I stared at it. It was heavy, solid. "What? Why?" "There's one number in it," he said, his voice low and calm, cutting through my panic. "Mine, in case he shows up again." He paused, and his dark eyes held mine. "In case you need help, Leah." He knew my name. I had never told him my name. The bus driver honked, an impatient sound. I clutched the phone, a strange warmth spreading from it into my cold fingers. "Get home safe," he said. I nodded dumbly and climbed onto the bus. The doors closed, sealing me in. As the bus pulled away from the curb, I looked out the back window. He was still standing on the corner, a tall, dark silhouette under the flickering orange light. He just watched, unmoving, until the bus turned the corner and he was gone. I made it to my apartment. I locked the deadbolt. I slid the chain. I leaned against the door, my legs finally giving out. I slid down the wood until I was sitting on the grimy welcome mat. The little plastic phone was clutched in my right hand, and I cried. I cried for the bone-deep terror of seeing Derek, for the sting in my arm, for the years he had stolen from me. I cried for the fear that he would come back, that this would never, ever end. But it was different this time. A new, sharp, and terrifying emotion was tangled up with the fear. It was a relief. It was the staggering, unfamiliar shock of someone finally, stepping between me and the pain. Someone saw me. Someone saw him. And he didn't look away. I didn't know who Nico Salerno was. I didn't know what he was. A gangster, a businessman, a ghost. I didn't know. But tonight, I held a phone with his number in it. And as I cried on the floor of my hallway, I wasn't just crying from fear. I was crying because for the first time in my life, I wasn't completely alone. The burner phone sat on my nightstand, a black plastic brick of a thing. It was an alien object in my small, worn-out room. For 3 days, I stared at it, picking it up, feeling its weight, and putting it down again. I didn't know his name. He was just the single, unnamed contact saved in the phone. I hadn't called. He hadn't called. I tried to go back to normal, but the axis of my world had tilted. Normal was a memory. I went to work. I wiped down the counter at the grill. I refilled coffee. I smiled my thin, practiced smile, but every time the bell over the diner door jingled, my shoulders would lock, my stomach twisting into a cold knot, expecting to see Derek. He didn't come, but his presence lingered, a sour smell in the air. The voicemails continued, each one a little darker, a little more unhinged. You think that suit is going to protect you? You think I'm scared of him? You'll see. Leah. You'll see what I do to pretty things. I was just so tired. The fear was a weight I carried in my bones, and it was getting heavier. I was sleeping in my clothes, a chair wedged under the doorknob. Every creak of the old building, every footstep in the hall sent a jolt of panic through my chest. I got home late on a Tuesday. Just after midnight, the shift had been brutal. A convention of truckers had left the diner looking like a war zone, and my feet felt like 2 blocks of broken glass. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my key already in my hand, poking out between my fingers. I turned the corner to my landing. My door was open, just a crack. The chain was still on, but it had been cut. The metal links hung uselessly from the frame. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. My blood went cold, slowing to a heavy sludge in my veins. He was there, or he had been. My hand fumbled in my pocket, past my keys, past my useless, regular phone. My fingers closed around the hard plastic of the burner phone. I backed away slowly, my sneakers silent on the linoleum. I got to the stairwell landing and scrambled down 1 flight, my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. I hid in the shadows by the 2nd floor landing, my back pressed to the grimy wall. My hands were shaking so hard it took 3 tries to unlock the phone. I pressed the only contact. It rang once, twice. Leah, his voice. No hello, no question, just my name, low and calm, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. He broke in. I whispered, my voice choking. My door. The chain is cut. I think I don't know if he's still in there. I'm on the stairs. Stay there, he said. There was no panic in his voice, just a flat, cold command. Do not move. I'm 5 minutes away. The line clicked dead. 5 minutes? It felt like 5 years. I stood in the dark, counting my own terrified heartbeats, straining my ears for any sound from my apartment above. Silence. A thick, terrible silence. It wasn't 5 minutes. It was 3. I heard the heavy front door of the building open and close, not footsteps, just a sense of presence. I leaned over the railing and saw him, Nico, and he was looking up, his eyes finding me in the shadows. He put 1 finger to his lips. He didn't make a sound. He moved up the stairs like a panther. silent, fluid, all contained energy. He passed me without a word, his focus entirely on my apartment door. He stopped, listened. Then, in one smooth motion, he pushed the door open. It swung wide, revealing the dark, empty space beyond. He disappeared inside. I waited. My whole life was compressed into those seconds. I heard nothing. No shouting, no struggle. "Leah!" His voice from my doorway. I crept up the stairs, my body trembling so hard I had to hold the railing. He was standing in the middle of my small living room, the single lamp on. The apartment was still. Nothing was broken, nothing was tossed. At first, it looked fine. "He's gone," Nico said. He was inspecting the door frame, the splintered wood where the chain had been ripped out. "He didn't take anything," I stammered, looking at my cheap television, my small stack of books. "He didn't come here to steal," Nico said. He walked past me, toward my bedroom. "No," I said, a new dread seizing me. He pushed the door open. The room was cold. He'd left the window open, the thin curtains fluttering in the damp night air. And the smell hit me. Stale tobacco. He had been in my bed. The sheets were pulled back. My pillows were tossed on the floor. And there, in the center of my bare mattress, was a single, crushed cigarette butt, the filter stained dark. I made a sound, a thin, sick noise deep in my throat. It was a violation so profound, so intimate that my legs gave out. I stumbled back, catching myself on the doorframe. He had been here, in my safe space, in my bed. He had laid his head where I laid mine. I was going to be sick. Nico looked at the cigarette, his face carved from stone, a muscle in his jaw clenched, the only sign of the cold fury radiating from him. He turned, his dark eyes meeting mine. "Pack a bag," he said. "You're not staying here tonight. I don't have anywhere. You'll stay with me. Pack what you need for a few days." He pulled out his own phone and made a call. His words were clipped, in a language I didn't recognize. Italian, maybe. He hung up and looked at me, waiting. I was frozen. My mind was just static. "Leah." His voice was softer but firm. "Go. Pack." I moved, robotic, grabbing my backpack, shoving in my work uniform, a toothbrush, a change of clothes. My hands were numb. I felt contaminated. I felt like I couldn't breathe the air in my own apartment. When I came out of the bedroom, I looked out the front window. A black sedan I didn't recognize was parked across the street, under the flickering streetlight. A man I'd never seen was leaning against the driver's side door, smoking. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice high with rising panic. "Is that one of his friends?" Nico came to stand beside me, looking down at the street. "No, that's one of my men." "Your men." My head snapped toward him. "You put a guard. You're watching me." The fear was suddenly replaced by a hot, sharp anger. It was Derek all over again. The watching, the control, the men. "I don't want a guard," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't want to be watched. I am not your property. I just got out of one cage. I will not be put in another." I was yelling, jabbing my finger at his chest. I didn't care. He didn't flinch. He just watched me, his gaze intense, letting me vent my terror and rage. When I finally ran out of breath, my shoulders heaving, he spoke. His voice was dangerously quiet. "Look at me. Leah." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "I am not here to control you," he said. Each word a carefully placed stone. "I am here to keep you breathing. Do you understand the difference?" I stared at him. The words echoed in the small, violated room. To keep you breathing. It wasn't about control. It was about survival. Derek wasn't just a stalker anymore. He was a threat. A physical, immediate threat. The cigarette on my mattress was a promise. My anger collapsed, leaving me empty and cold. I just nodded, clutching the strap of my backpack. "Okay." He led me downstairs, his hand a firm, warm pressure on the small of my back. It wasn't a possessive touch. It was a guide. "I am here. You are safe." His car was parked a block away. A heavy, black European sedan with windows so dark they looked like polished obsidian. The man I'd seen by the other car was gone, or had faded back into the shadows. Nico opened the passenger door for me. The inside smelled like leather and something clean, metallic. When he closed the door, the sounds of the city, the sirens, the traffic were instantly muffled, as if we were in a vault. He got in the driver's side and just sat for a moment, the engine a low, powerful hum beneath us. "Where are we going?" I whispered. He put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb, his movements economical and precise. Somewhere safe. He didn't drive toward the nicer parts of town. He just drove, heading toward the old, dark industrial district by the river. The silence in the car was thick, heavy. I watched the blurred, empty warehouses pass by. He told me he killed my brother. I said, the words just came out. I hadn't planned to say them. I hadn't said them to anyone, not even Rosa. Nico's hands didn't waver on the steering wheel. He just listened. "It was years ago," I continued, the story tumbling out of me, a torrent of poison I'd held in for too long. My younger brother, Ben. He was 17, I was 19. Derek was always wild. He was driving, drunk. He was always drunk. I was staring at my own hands, twisted in my lap. We were arguing. I had found texts on his phone from another girl. I was screaming at him. Ben was in the back, telling us to shut up. Derek looked at me. He was so angry. He said, "You want to see crazy, Leah?" He floored it. He ran a red light. The memory was so vivid. It was like a film playing behind my eyes, the sound of the horn, the crunch of metal, the impossible, endless spin. Ben died instantly. Derek broke his arm. I just had bruises. Derek's uncle, the cop, he made it go away. He fixed the report, said the other driver ran the light. They didn't even test Derek. I finally looked at Nico. His face was a mask of cold fury, his gaze fixed on the dark road. "But that's not the worst part," I whispered, the shame burning my throat. "The worst part is what he did after. He told me it was my fault. He said if I hadn't been screaming at him, he would have been paying attention. He said I killed my brother. And I believed him. For years. I believed him." I was crying now, silent, hot tears tracking down my cheeks. He used it. I choked out. Every time I tried to leave, he would just look at me and say, "You're just going to run away? Like you ran away from Ben?" He owned me with it. He still owns me with it. Nico pulled the car over, stopping in the shadows of an old, rusted bridge. The only light was the dim glow of the dashboard. He turned off the engine. The silence was absolute. He just sat there. He didn't offer sympathy. He didn't tell me it wasn't my fault. He just absorbed my words. Then slowly, he reached across the console. He didn't try to hold me, and he didn't try to pat my shoulder. He just laid his hand, palm up, on top of mine. It was a gesture of simple, grounding contact, a lifeline. His hand was warm, calloused, and steady. "You don't owe me anything," he said, his voice a low rumble. It was such a strange thing to say, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. Derek had built our entire relationship on a mountain of debt. You owe me for loving you. You owe me for protecting you. You owe me for my brother's life. Nico was offering the opposite. He was offering nothing. No debt, no obligation. I turned my hand over and laced my fingers with his. His grip tightened, strong and sure. "I have a guest apartment," Marhi said, his voice still low. "It's in a secure building. No one gets in without my approval. You'd be safe there." I hesitated, my fear of Derek warring with my terror of dependency. I can't be kept. I won't trade one cage for another." He looked at me for a long moment, his dark eyes searching my face. Then he nodded. Once, he didn't push. He didn't argue. He respected the no. "All right," he said. He started the car. "Where does Rosa live?" The next day, I went to work. Rosa had been horrified, letting me sleep on her couch. But I couldn't hide. I needed the money. I needed to pretend my life wasn't completely falling apart. I was a wreck. I dropped a full tray of sodas, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't get a grip. At 3 p.m, the bell on the door jangled violently. It was Derek. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled. He stormed in, his gaze landing on me like a physical blow. "Leah!" he yelled, and the entire diner went silent. "You think you can ignore me? You think your new rich boyfriend scares me?" I froze behind the counter, my heart in my throat. "Derek, please," I whispered. "Don't do this here." "Don't do this." He laughed, a high, ugly sound. He started to move toward the counter. "I'll do whatever I want. You're mine. Leah, you hear me?" He was 2 steps away when a man slid out of one of the booths. I hadn't even seen him come in. He was younger than Nico, handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, with a small smirk on his face. "Hey, Voss," the man said, his voice casual. Derek stopped. He recognized this man. The color drained from his face. "Gio," Derek stammered. "I'm just here to talk to my girlfriend." "She doesn't look like your girlfriend," Gio said, his smirk widening, but his eyes were cold as ice. "And she doesn't want to talk. You need to leave." "You can't tell me." Gio moved. It was so fast I almost missed it. He grabbed Derek by the front of his jacket, bunching the fabric in his fist, and slammed him back against the wall. The ketchup bottles on the table rattled. "This is your one and only warning," Gio hissed. His voice no longer casual. It was lethal. "Nico doesn't like cleaning up messes, and you, Paisan, are a mess. You stay away from the diner. You stay away from her apartment. You stay away from her. If I see you or hear of you or even smell you near her again, I will break both of your legs, slowly." He punctuated the sentence by slamming Derek's head back against the wall. It wasn't hard, just a sharp, emphatic thud. He released him, brushing his hands off. "Now get out." Derek, his face pale with terror and humiliation, scrambled for the door and disappeared. The diner was silent. Gio looked at me, winked, and slid back into his booth. He picked up his coffee cup as if nothing had happened. My shift ended at 11. I was a ghost, just moving on autopilot, when I pushed open the back door to the alley. Nico was there, and he was leaning against his car, the streetlight catching the silver in his dark hair. He wasn't in a suit, and he was in dark jeans and a black Henley, and he looked different. More real. More dangerous. He just watched me as I walked toward him. I got 2 feet away from him, and the entire day, the entire week, the entire year just crashed down on me. The dam broke. A sob tore out of my chest, a ragged, ugly sound. I collapsed. I didn't fall gracefully, I just fell apart. He caught me. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against his chest, one hand coming up to cradle the back of my head. He was so solid. He was a rock in the middle of my hurricane. I buried my face in his shirt, which smelled like soap and night air, and I wept. I cried for my brother, for my lost years, for the cigarette in my bed, for the humiliation in the diner. He just held me. He didn't say, "It's okay." He didn't offer platitudes. He just held me, absorbing my grief, his hand stroking my hair. When the sobs finally quieted, he gently took my shoulders and held me at arm's length, forcing me to look at him. His dark eyes were soft. "You're safe now," he said. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a fact. "I'm okay," I whispered, my voice raw. I was too tired to fight, too tired to be proud. "Okay, the apartment, just for a few days." He nodded. "Just for a few days." The apartment was sterile. It was a high-floor corner unit in a nameless, glass and steel building. It had expensive furniture that looked like no one had ever sat on it. But it was quiet. And the locks on the door looked like they belonged on a bank vault. He showed me the guest room, which was nicer than my entire apartment, and left me alone. I slept for 12 hours, a deep, heavy, exhausted sleep, the first real sleep I'd had in months. I woke up to the smell of real coffee. I walked out into the main living area. The sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Nico was in the kitchen, his back to me. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt, his sleeves rolled up, and he was cooking. Scrambled eggs sizzled in a pan. The sight was so profoundly, bizarrely domestic that I just stood there. This silent, terrifying man who commanded other men to break legs was making me breakfast. He heard me, turning. "You're awake. Coffee's fresh." He gestured to a mug on the marble island. I sat down, my hands wrapped around the warm ceramic. Why? I asked, my voice still thick with sleep. Why are you doing all this? The guard, Gio, this breakfast. He focused on the eggs, sliding them onto a plate, adding toast. He put the plate in front of me. Eat, he said. He poured himself a coffee and leaned against the counter opposite me. He was quiet for a long time, just watching me. We all have scars, Leah, he said finally, his voice low. Some are just louder than others. Yours are very loud right now. He lifted his hand, looking at his knuckles, which were bruised. And you? I asked, nodding at his hand. What about your scars? A small, sad smile touched the corner of his mouth. Not every wound bleeds. He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. He lifted the side of his black t-shirt, just an inch. There, just above the waistband of his sweatpants, was a puckered, angry-looking scar. It was pale and jagged, the skin pulled tight, a bullet graze. I stared at it. It was real. It was proof of the life I couldn't see, the world he came from. Without thinking, my hand moved. I reached across the island, my fingers trembling. I was surprised he didn't flinch, that he didn't pull away. He stood perfectly still, watching me. I touched it. My fingertips traced the raised, rough line of skin. It was warm. The air in the kitchen changed, the sunlight, the smell of coffee. It all faded. The world shrank to this single point of contact, my finger on his skin. He was breathing slowly, his chest rising and falling. His eyes were locked on mine, and they were dark, intense, and full of something I couldn't name. My gaze lifted from the scar to his mouth. He didn't move. He was giving me the choice. He was giving me all the power. I could pull back, and this moment would end. I didn't pull back. I leaned in. He met me in the middle. The first touch of his lips was impossibly soft. It was tentative. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of shared pain. A question. Are you real? I breathed in, and my lips parted just slightly. It was all the answer he needed. His other hand came up, cupping my jaw, his thumb stroking the skin just below my ear. He deepened the kiss, and it was like drowning and being saved all at once. It wasn't rough, or demanding, or hungry in the way Derek's had been. It was slow and deep and full of a desperate, unspoken tenderness. It was a promise. You are here. You are safe. You are breathing. When he finally, slowly, pulled back, our foreheads rested against each other. I kept my eyes closed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sharp, unfamiliar glare of morning sun through a wall of glass. My eyes snapped open. The sheets were high thread count, impossibly soft, and smelled like him, soap and something clean, like iron. Panic. It was a cold, immediate spike straight into my heart. I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't at Rosa's. I was in a cage. A beautiful, expensive, high-rise cage. The kiss in the kitchen. His gentleness. It was just a different kind of bait. Derek used threats. This man used tenderness. The result was the same. I was trapped. I bolted upright, the sheet pooling around my waist. My heart was a rabbit's. Frantic against my ribs, I was in his t-shirt, the one he'd given me to sleep in. I felt owned. The door to the guest room opened. Nico. He was already dressed in a dark, crisp shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He was holding 2 mugs of coffee. I flinched, scrambling back against the headboard, pulling the sheet up to my chin. My breath was coming in short, sharp gasps. Don't come near me. His face, which had been calm, shuddered. He stopped, holding the mugs. He saw the raw terror in my eyes. He saw me looking at the door, at the windows, calculating. He saw me, not as the woman he'd kissed, but as the animal Derek had trained. He didn't get angry. He didn't try to calm me down or tell me I was being ridiculous. He just understood. He slowly walked forward, but not toward the bed. He placed 1 mug on the desk across the room, a safe distance away. That one's for you, he said, his voice quiet, neutral. He set his own mug down beside it. I have a meeting downtown, he said, his back to me. He straightened his cuffs, his movements precise. I will be gone for at least 3 hours. Gio will be in the lobby. He's not here to keep you in. He's here to keep others out. He turned. his dark eyes meeting mine. "Your bag is by the door. The keys are on the kitchen counter. You are free to go, Leah. You can walk out that door right now, and no one will stop you." He paused. "But I hope you don't." And then he just left. He didn't wait for an answer. He didn't try to touch me. He just gave me the space. He left the apartment, and I heard the heavy, definitive click of the front door closing. I sat there, trembling, for a full 10 minutes. I listened. The apartment was silent, save for the distant sound of city traffic, 20 stories below. He'd left me, alone. I wasn't a prisoner. The realization was so staggering, so contrary to every instinct Derek had beaten into me, that I started to cry. But these were different tears. They were tears of a deep, aching confusion. He had all the power, and he had just walked away. He'd given it all back to me. I drank the coffee. I took a long, hot shower in the adjoining bathroom, a space of marble and glass that was bigger than my entire kitchen. I got dressed in my own familiar, worn-out jeans and a sweater. I packed my backpack. I walked out into the kitchen, and there, on the polished marble counter, was the key card, just lying there. I picked it up. I could leave. I could go back to Rosa's, or find some new, tiny, crumbling apartment and start hiding all over again. My old phone, the one I kept in my bag, vibrated. I'd kept it charged, out of a morbid, compulsive need to know what Derek was doing. A new message. It wasn't a text. It was a video file. My stomach turned to ice. My fingers were numb as I opened it. It was me and Derek, from years ago. From before Ben's death, we were on his old couch, and I was drunk. I was laughing, silly. Wearing one of his shirts. It was intimate. It wasn't bad, but it was private. It was a moment of vulnerability he had captured. The video ended, and another one immediately started. This one was darker. It was me, crying after a fight. My face was puffy, my voice slurring. "I'm sorry, Derek, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please don't be mad." He had kept these all this time. A new text message appeared below the files. "Just remembering the good times. Lee, I bet your new boyfriend would love to see these. I've got plenty more. I wonder if the whole internet would like to see them too." I dropped the phone. It clattered on the marble floor. I backed away from it as if it were a snake. He was going to leak them. He was going to strip me bare in front of the whole world. The shame was so profound, so suffocating. I could barely breathe. He was going to ruin me, and he was going to enjoy every second of it. I was still standing there, staring at the phone. When the front door opened, it was Nico. He'd come back early. He took one look at my face, chalk white, frozen in terror, and his entire demeanor changed. The calm businessman vanished. The predator was back. What did he do? His voice was a low growl. I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the phone on the floor. He picked it up. He watched the videos. I saw his knuckles go white. His jaw set so hard a muscle jumped under his skin. He didn't look at me with disgust. His eyes, they were black. They were the coldest, most lethal things I had ever seen. He pulled out his own phone and made a call. "Gio," he said, his voice flat, "get my tech, now. I'm sending him 2 files. I want the source of the message. I want every bit of data associated with it, and I want the location of the sender." He hung up. He gently, almost reverently, placed my phone on the counter and pushed it aside. Then he looked at me. "I can make him disappear. Leah." The words hung in the sterile, sunlit air. "There's a place, a foundry, upstate. He would just stop. No one would ever find him. No police, no reports. He would just be gone. All of this," he motioned to the phone, "would be gone with him. Just say the word." He was offering me murder, a clean, quiet, final solution, and the most terrifying part? I wanted it. A dark, ugly part of me screamed yes. Yes, erase him, make him pay for Ben, for the cigarette, for these videos. Make him stop. I saw a life where I didn't have to look over my shoulder, where my past couldn't be uploaded for the world to see. It was so tempting. It was a poison-sweet relief. I looked at his hands, the hands that had touched my scar, that had made me breakfast, the hands that could and would end a man's life. If I said yes, what would that make me? I would be trading Derek's cage for Nico's. I would be bound to him not by fear, but by a shared, bloody secret. I would be just as trapped, just as lost. No, I whispered. My voice shook, but it was firm. His expression didn't change, but his eyes searched mine. No, I said again, stronger this time. If you do that, he wins. He makes me like him. He makes you a monster for my sake. I can't live with that. I won't. I need to be part of how this ends. Nico, not by hiding behind you while you kill him for me. It has to be me. I have to be the one to stop him. He watched me for a long, silent moment. I saw a flicker of... Was it pride? Respect? He nodded. Slowly. All right, he said. He took a deep, steadying breath, the killer receding, the man returning. All right, Leah, we do it your way. We did it my way, but my way, it turned out, meant I wasn't alone. The next day, Rosa picked me up. Nico had arranged it. She was driving a new van. Her face split in a grin. Guess who owns a flower shop? She'd beamed. Nico had helped, an anonymous loan. She'd called it winking. He'd found her a small, perfect storefront in a decent part of town, and she needed help. I'm not going back to the grill, I told her. Hell no, you're not, she said. You're working for me. You'll be arranging bouquets, not cleaning up grease. And so I did. I started working part-time at Rosa's Blooms. The work was quiet, peaceful. The smell of eucalyptus and lavender and fresh-cut roses was a balm, scraping the scent of old coffee and fear out of my senses. Nico also arranged something else. He introduced me to a woman named Dr. Alani. She wasn't a police counselor. She was a private trauma therapist. Her office discreet. Her voice calm and steady. Rosa's idea, Nico had said, but I knew he'd paid for it. I don't know how to talk about it, I whispered in my first session, staring at my hands. Then let's just sit for a while. Dr. Alani said, you don't have to talk, you just have to show up. So I showed up, twice a week, and slowly, painfully, I began to unravel the knots Derek had tied inside me. The nights changed. I was no longer a guest. The apartment was home. A strange, temporary, borrowed home, but it was safe. I still slept in the guest room, but the nightmares were bad. The ones where Derek found the flower shop, where the videos were playing on a giant screen in the middle of the city. One night, I woke up screaming, my throat raw. Before I was even fully awake, my door was open. Nico was there, silhouetted in the hall light. He wasn't wearing a shirt, just his sweatpants. The scar on his side was stark in the dim light. You're all right, he said, his voice rough with sleep. You're here. You're safe. I was trembling, the sheets damp with cold sweat. Don't leave me, I whispered, the plea torn from a part of me I'd thought was dead. He didn't move toward the bed. He just stood in the doorway. I'm right here. No, I mean, can you stay? He hesitated. Then he walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, a safe distance away, his back to me. He was a solid, living shield, guarding the door. He sat there, in silence, until my breathing evened out, and I fell back into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. It became a routine. He'd sit in the chair in the corner of my room, reading a book under a small light, until I fell asleep. Then, one night, I woke up, and he was gone. The chair was empty. Panic seized me. I got up, my feet padding on the cold hardwood floor. I found him in his own room, asleep. He'd clearly just given up and crashed. I stood in his doorway, watching him, this man. This contradiction, this killer who sat guard over my nightmares. I was so cold, I walked over and slid under the covers. On the very edge of the king-sized bed, my back to him, I was fully clothed in my own sweats and a t-shirt. I felt the bed dip as he stirred. He tensed. Then, he let out a long, slow breath. He didn't touch me. He just existed, 3 feet away. The next night, I just started there, in his bed, still on the edge. A week later, I woke up from a bad dream, shivering, without a word. He rolled over and his hand covered mine, just his hand on my hand. A week after that, I woke up in the middle of the night and found I had, in my sleep, curled into his side, my head on his shoulder. His arm was draped protectively over me. He never pushed. He never asked. He never pressured. He just let me come to him. Our nights were quiet, but our evenings were filled with conversation. We ate dinner together at the huge, empty dining table. He'd ask about the flower shop. I'd ask. I didn't know what to ask him. What do you do? I asked one night, pushing pasta around my plate. In those meetings? I manage my family's interests. He said, logistics, imports, real estate. It was a clean, polished answer. It was a lie, or at least not the whole truth. And before that, he was quiet. Before that, I was in a different business, the family business. The one with the scars, I said softly. He nodded. One night, I was telling him about Dr. Alani, about how we were talking about my past, before Ben. I used to want to be a writer, I confessed, the words tasting strange. I had notebooks, poems, stories, just ideas. Derek found them. He read them out loud to his friends. He made fun of them. He said I was stupid. I burned them. I never wrote again. Nico watched me, his expression unreadable. The next evening, I came home from the flower shop. He was waiting for me. I have something for you, he said. He led me to a corner of the vast living room, a space by the window that overlooked the entire, glittering, chaotic city. There was a small, solid wooden desk, and on top of it, there was a typewriter. It was beautiful. It was old, black, heavy iron with round, silver-rimmed keys. Nico. I was speechless. You said you liked to write, he said, his voice almost shy. This was my grandfather's. It has a good weight to it. I ran my fingers over the keys. They clacked with a satisfying, solid sound. It wasn't a laptop. It wasn't a flimsy, erasable screen. It was permanent. It was real. This was the most intimate thing he could have done. He hadn't just listened. He had heard me. He had resurrected a part of me that Derek hadn't just killed, but had mutilated and buried. I turned to him, my eyes full of tears. He didn't step back. He just waited. I put my hand on his chest, feeling the steady, slow beat of his heart. Thank you, I whispered. You have a story to tell, Leah, he said, his hand coming up to cover mine. You should tell it. That night, the line blurred. We were in his bed. We weren't talking. We were just watching each other in the dim light of the city. He was on his back, his arm behind his head. I was on my side, looking at him, at his face, the scar on his side, the strength in his arms. He had given me my voice back. He had given me safety. He had given me a choice, and I was choosing. I leaned over, my hair falling, creating a curtain around us. I kissed him. It wasn't like the first kiss in the kitchen. This wasn't a question, it was an answer. His hand came up, tangling in my hair, holding me. The kiss was deep, slow and desperate. It was 2 years of fear and loneliness and pain, all melting into this one moment of pure, terrifying, absolute trust. He rolled, and he was over me, his weight a solid, grounding presence. He broke the kiss, his forehead resting against mine. Leah, he whispered, his voice thick. Are you sure? I was trembling. My body was a live wire of old fear and new desire. I was terrified, not of him, but of this, of feeling again, of being this open. Yes, I breathed. My hands came up, my fingers digging into his shoulders. Holding on. Don't stop. He kissed me again, and his hands were magic. They were everywhere. But they were gentle. They were worshipful. They memorized my skin, my sides, my hips. There was no rush. There was no conquest. He was learning me, and he was letting me learn him. When he finally moved, it was slow. It was a joining that felt sacred. I tensed, a ghost of old pain, and a tear slipped from the corner of my eye. He stopped. Instantly. I'm okay, I whispered, my voice breaking. It's not you. It's just been a long time. He didn't move. He just looked down at me. his dark eyes full of a tenderness that shattered me. He bent his head, and his lips, so soft, kissed the tear from my cheek. "We have all night," he murmured. "We have all the time in the world." And he just held me. He waited. He let me breathe, let me relax, let me feel safe, not just safe from Derek, but safe with him. He made love to me, and it was slow and emotional and so full of unspoken trust that it felt like I was finally, after all these years, being put back together. But the world he came from, it didn't sleep. I began to understand the weight of it. He'd have late-night meetings with Gio in the lobby. He'd come back to the apartment, and I'd see the shadow in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. His tech guy, a young, nervous man named Sal, came by to update him. "He's still posting, boss," Sal said, not looking at me. "Not just the videos. He's on dark forums. He's talking big. He's saying he's got leverage on Nico Salerno. He's working with the Black Fangs." Nico went very, very still. "The Black Fangs?" "Yeah, he's been seen with their lieutenant, a guy named Spike. They think Derek is their way in, a way to provoke you." Sal swallowed hard. "They think he's going to use her, Leah, to draw you into a war." Nico dismissed him. The apartment was silent. "Who are the Black Fangs?" I asked, my blood running cold. "Rivals," Nico said, his voice clipped. "Amateurs, vicious. They want the territory I hold, and Derek just handed them a match." The fear was back. "He's using me. He's trying," Nico said, his voice a low growl, "and I'm not gonna let him." He kept his world separate. He never brought guns into the apartment. He never spoke of the violence. He tried to build a wall around me. But one afternoon, I was looking for a book on his shelf. I found a small wooden box tucked in the back. It wasn't locked. I opened it. It was full of old photographs. A younger Nico, barely 20, standing with a younger Gio, both of them in cheap suits, looking cocky. Nico with an older man who looked just like him, and one, a Polaroid, tucked at the bottom. Nico, he was kneeling on a concrete floor. His hands, they were dark, glistening, covered in blood. He was looking at the camera, and his eyes, they were the eyes from the bus stop. Dead, flat, empty. The man in the picture was not the man who kissed my tears away. He was a monster. My hands were shaking when he came home. I didn't yell. I just held the picture out. "Who are you?" "Nico." He stopped. He looked at the photo, then at my face. He didn't lie. He didn't make excuses. "That," he said, his voice heavy, "was during the war for the North Side. After my father was killed, the man who on the floor was one of the men responsible." "You killed him," I whispered. "Yes." The word was so simple, so absolute. I did things, Leah, in that life, that I am not proud of, he said, stepping toward me. I flinched, and he stopped. I was what I had to be, to survive, to protect my family. It was a long time ago. "Is it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "The Black Fangs." "Derek." "It doesn't sound like it's over." "It's different now," he insisted, his eyes pleading with me. "I'm different. I'm trying to build something, not just burn things down." I looked from the photo, from the blood and the dead eyes, to his face. The face that had looked at me with such tenderness. The man who had bought me a typewriter. I believed him. I believed he wanted to be different. But I was terrified. I had put my trust in a man who was capable of such cold, final violence. I had run from Derek, a low-life abuser, and fallen in love with a killer. I was beginning to trust him with my life. But I was terrified that the violence he was trying to bury would be the only thing that could save us. The phone rang at 6 a.m, a shrill, violent sound that ripped me from a rare, deep sleep. I sat bolt upright in Nico's bed, my heart instantly pounding. The phone, my old one, was on the nightstand. It was Rosa. "Leah," she sobbed, her voice a raw wound. "Leah, oh, God, Mia, he ruined it." "Rosa, what? What's wrong?" I was already out of bed, pulling on my sweats. Nico was awake, sitting up, his eyes sharp and alert. "What is it?" He found my shop. Leah, she wept. He found us. The drive over was a blur of self-hatred. Every red light was an accusation. Rosa, who had done nothing but help me. Rosa, who had taken a chance, who was so proud of her new van and her little shop. I had brought this. I was a plague. We got there before the sun was fully up. The street was quiet, but the shop... The big glass windows were shattered, spider webs of broken glass covering the sidewalk, but he hadn't just broken them. He'd poured something paint, thick, black, roofing tar, all over the door, the sign, the sidewalk, and the flowers. He'd gotten inside. He'd pulled every arrangement, every bucket, every single rose and lily and carnation, and thrown them into the street. The road was a graveyard of petals, crushed under the black tar. Inside, he'd used a spray can. The walls were covered in his familiar, angry scrawl. Whore! Liar! She's mine! Oh, God, I whispered, my hand over my mouth. I felt the bile rise in my throat. Rosa was just standing there, her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. Nico got out of the car. He didn't say a word. He just took it in. His face was unreadable, a mask of cold, controlled observation. He walked over to the tar, looked at the broken lock, then at the spray-painted wall. "This is my fault," I said, the words choking me. I turned to him, my eyes burning. "This is me. I did this. Nico, he did this because of me, because I'm with you." "No," Nico said, his voice flat. He looked at me, his gaze cutting through my panic. "This isn't because of me. This is because of him. He did this because you are no longer under his control." He walked over to Rosa, his wallet already out. He pressed a thick stack of bills into her hand. "Go home. Call a glass company. Call a cleaner. I will have men here in 20 minutes to stand guard until it's fixed. Send me every bill." Rosa just nodded, numb. I couldn't move. I was just staring at the word, mine. Nico came back to me. He put his hands on my shoulders, his grip firm, forcing me to look at him. "This isn't about love, Leah," he said, his voice low and intense. "This isn't about jealousy. This is about possession. He's not going to stop until he thinks he owns you again. Do you understand me? He will burn down anything or anyone that you love. He's not just trying to hurt you. He's trying to isolate you until he's the only one left." His words followed me. They followed me to Dr. Alani's office. They followed me back to the apartment until he's the only one left. Derek hadn't learned this behavior. He'd inherited it. I knew what I had to do. I didn't tell Nico. He would have stopped me. I took a cab to a part of Redbrook I hadn't seen in years, the neighborhood where Derek grew up, where the houses leaned on each other, their paint peeling, their lawns choked with weeds. I stood on the sagging porch of his mother's house. I knocked. The door opened a crack. "Mrs." Voss stared at me through the gap, a cigarette dangling from her thin, chapped lips. She looked old, older than she was, a washed-out, exhausted woman in a faded housecoat. "Leah," she said, her voice a smoker's rasp. No surprise, no welcome. "He vandalized my friend's shop. Mrs. Voss," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "He's out of control. You have to talk to him. You have to make him stop." She took a long drag of her cigarette, the smoke veiling her face. She let out a sigh that smelled like ash and stale coffee. He loves hard." "Leah," she said, her eyes shifting away from mine. "You know how he is. He's passionate. You shouldn't have provoked him, getting involved with that rich man." There it was. The same old song. "Provoked him," I said, my voice rising. "He broke into my apartment. He's sending me threats. He hurt my friend. Boys will be boys," she mumbled, shrugging. Her eyes were dead. She was a ghost. She was just gone. "He's going to hurt someone, Mrs. Voss," I pleaded, "or he's going to get himself killed. Don't you care?" Her eyes finally focused on me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something sharp and ugly. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" she hissed. "Coming here, with your new life. Derek is a good boy. He gets angry. His father was the same. You just have to know how to handle them. You." You never learned how to handle him. You always fought back. I stared at her. His father. You just have to know how to handle them. I was looking at my own future. A future where I spent my life apologizing for a broken man, excusing his violence, blaming myself. This was the pattern. This was the cage, passed from one generation to the next. There was no help here. There was only the sickness, echoing back and forth, from mother to son, from father to wife. You're right, I said, my voice suddenly, terribly calm. I never learned how to handle him. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I walked. I felt a cold, hard clarity settle in my bones. I was not just fighting Derek. I was fighting this acceptance, this weakness, and I would not let it win. When I got back to the apartment, Nico was waiting. He knew where I'd been. The fury was rolling off him in silent, cold waves. That was foolish, Leah, he said. I had to see, I whispered, sinking onto the couch. He watched me, the anger warring with a different, softer emotion. He saw the new, cold exhaustion in my eyes. He let out a long breath and sat beside me. He didn't touch me. Pack a bag, he said. A real one. For a few days. What? Nico, I can't leave Rosa. Rosa is fine. My men are rebuilding her shop, better than it was. You need to get out of this city. You need to breathe. Breathe. How can I breathe when he's... Because I am telling you to, he said, his voice gentle, but leaving no room for argument. For 3 days. That's all I'm asking. 3 days. Let me take this off your shoulders. Let the world stop. Please. I looked at him, at the exhaustion in his own eyes. He was fighting this war with me. Okay, I whispered. 3 days. He drove for 2 hours, north along the coast. The city and its grime fell away, replaced by open sky and the sharp, clean smell of salt. The house was not a house. It was a hideaway. It was built into a cliff, a small, modern structure of wood and glass, invisible from the road. The entire front wall was glass, looking out over the endless, gray-blue ocean. There was no one here. No guards, no Geo. Just us. Nico, it was my mother's, he said, carrying our bags inside. It's quiet. No one knows it exists. For the first day, I just slept. I slept on the couch, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, the sound of the surf a constant, rhythmic breath. Nico sat in a chair, reading, or just watching the ocean. He let me be. On the second day, I woke up, and the fear was gone. It wasn't hiding, it was just absent. The house was quiet. The air was clean. I walked out onto the deck, and the wind whipped my hair. Nico came out, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He was in jeans and a gray, worn-out sweater. He looked young. He looked like a man, not a mafia boss. You're smiling, he said. I touched my face. It's quiet here. I know. We walked down the wooden steps to the private, rocky beach. The water was freezing, but we took off our shoes and let the foam rush over our ankles. I laughed. A real, bubbling, unrestrained sound. It startled me. Nico just watched me, a small, soft smile on his own face. We spent the day exploring the tide pools, collecting sea glass. We cooked dinner together, a simple meal of pasta and wine. We talked about everything, not Derek, not the Black Fangs. We talked about his mother, who loved this place, about my writing, about the first book I'd ever loved, for the first time. I didn't feel like a victim. I just felt like Leah. That night, we were lying on the thick rug in front of the fireplace, a single blanket over us. He was reading to me, his voice a low, melodic rumble. It was a book of poetry. I was resting my head on his chest, feeling the vibration of his words. He stopped reading. What? I murmured, my eyes closed. This part, he said, his voice rough. It's a lot. I lifted my head. Read it. He read a stanza about love, about a connection so deep it was a kind of worship. It was intense and beautiful, and left the air thick with unspoken things. "Wow," I whispered, my face warm. He put the book down. "He's not wrong." He was looking at me, his eyes dark in the firelight. "Leah," he said, his voice barely a breath. He leaned over, but he didn't kiss my mouth. He kissed my forehead and then my temple. His lips brushed my cheek, and then he moved lower, his hand sliding down my leg, his touch light, electric. He kissed the sensitive skin of my inner elbow. He kissed my wrist. And then he lifted my foot, and he kissed my ankle. It was the most intensely intimate, tender, reverent thing I had ever experienced. It wasn't about sex. It was about me. Every part of me. I laughed, a small, breathy sound of pure, unadulterated joy. "What are you doing?" He looked up at me, his face serious, but his eyes were smiling. "I'm appreciating the art." He teased me, and I teased him back. We were playful. We were two people, just in love. And when he made love to me that night, on the rug in front of the fire, with the sound of the ocean crashing outside, there were no ghosts. There was no fear. There was just him and me, and a feeling of safety so profound. I finally let myself fall. The drive back to Red Brook was silent. The gray, oppressive weight of the city settled on us as soon as we saw the skyline. We walked into the apartment. It was clean, sterile, cold. Gio was waiting in the lobby. One look at his face, and I knew. The peace was over. "Boss," he said, his voice grim. "We need to talk, now. Go upstairs. Leah," Nico said, his voice already flat. "The beach house man gone." "No," I said. "Whatever it is, I can hear it." Nico looked at me, then at Gio. He nodded. "Sal's been tracking Derek's chatter," Gio said, his eyes avoiding mine. "He's not just talking. He got his hands on some hardware, real military-grade stuff." "What did he do? Gio?" Nico's voice was deadly. He didn't just target the shop, boss. He planted a device, a car bomb." My blood went cold. "What?" Not on your car, Leah," Gio said, finally looking at me, his face pale. "Worse. He put it under the bench at your old bus stop. The one you used to take to the grill. It was on a timer. For the morning rush, he was going to take out everyone." I stopped breathing. The children. The old woman who always waited for that bus. He would have. "It's handled," Gio said quickly. "My team found it. We've got it. It's disarmed. It's over." Nico was perfectly, absolutely still. His rage was a physical thing, a black hole that sucked all the air out of the room. He was enraged, but he was completely, terrifyingly calm. He looked at me, his eyes black. "I'm ending this. Tonight. You're going to kill him," I whispered. "I'm going to stop him," he corrected me, his voice final. "No." Both men looked at me. "No," I said again, my voice shaking but hard. You can't just handle it. I told you, I have to be part of this." "Leah, this is not a discussion on why." Nico snapped, his control breaking for a second. "He built a bomb. He was going to kill innocent people. This is over." "I'm not going to let you be a killer for me," I yelled. "Don't you see? That's what he wants. He wants to drag you down. He wants to drag me down. I have to see him. I have to face him. I need to show him he doesn't own me. Not anymore." "Absolutely not," Nico said, turning away. "It's too dangerous." "And what about me?" I said, stepping in front of him, grabbing his arm. "What about my choice? If you just make him disappear." "I'm still hiding. I'm just hiding behind you. I'll be your prisoner instead of his. Is that what you want?" He stared at me, his jaw clenched. He saw the strength in my eyes, the strength he had given me, the strength from the beach. He fought a war inside himself, and I saw him relent. He let out a long, ragged breath. "All right," he said, his voice strained. "We do this, but on my terms. My location, my conditions. You are never, not for 1 second, alone. Understood?" "Understood," I said. The bar was neutral, which meant Nico owned it. It was a dimly lit, old-world steakhouse, closed for a private event. Gio was behind the bar, polishing a glass. 2 other men I didn't recognize were at a table by the kitchen. The exits were covered. Nico and I sat in a booth. "He's coming," Nico said, his phone buzzing. A minute later, the door opened. Derek walked in. He looked terrible, thin, wired, his eyes darting around. He saw us, and a sick, arrogant smirk spread across his face. He thought he was in control. He thought he'd been summoned to negotiate. He sauntered over, sliding into the booth opposite us. Well, he sneered, looking at Nico. "The big boss wants to talk, finally ready to make a deal. The Black Fangs pay well, but Leah's worth more." My moment, I leaned forward. My voice was low, and it didn't shake. "It's over. Derek." He stared at me, his smirk faltering. He'd expected me to be hiding behind Nico. He hadn't expected me to speak. "What did you say?" I said, "It's over," I repeated. "The videos, the shop, the bus stop. It's all done. You're done." His face went from confusion to rage. He'd been found out. You think he changes anything?" Derek lunged, his hand grabbing my wrist, his fingers digging in. "You're mine. You've always been mine. You belong to me." Pain. Familiar, sharp. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cry out. I just looked at him. I looked at his wild, pathetic, desperate eyes, and I felt nothing. Just pity. Nico moved. He didn't yell. He didn't stand. He just leaned across the table. His voice was a soft, deadly whisper. "Let her go." Derek froze. Nico leaned closer, his voice dropping so low it was just a vibration of pure menace. "Touch her again, say her name again, and I will personally," he said, his eyes flicking to the heavy glass ashtray in the middle of the table. "Leave your hands in it. Am I clear?" Derek's hand, the one on my wrist, started to tremble. He saw it. He saw the truth in Nico's eyes. He saw the man from the Polaroid. He let go of my arm as if it were on fire. Nico just stared at him. He didn't need to say another word. He slid out of the booth. "We're leaving." He put his hand on my back and guided me out of the restaurant, leaving Derek sitting there, pale and shaking, in the silent, empty room. We got in the car. The silence was thick. I was processing what had just happened. I looked down at my hands, resting in my lap. They were shaking. My whole body was trembling with the adrenaline crash, but I wasn't crying. I didn't freeze this time, I whispered, a strange, fierce pride swelling in my chest. He grabbed me, and I wasn't afraid. I just saw him. Nico reached across the console and took my hand, his grip warm and steady, stilling the tremor. He didn't say anything until we were back in the apartment, the door locked, the city lights glittering below us. He just held me. He stood in the middle of the living room, and he just held me, his arms wrapped around me, my head tucked under his chin. I wasn't crying. I was just breathing. "I think," I whispered, my voice muffled against his shirt. "I think I'm starting to feel like me again." I felt him kiss the top of my head. "Then I'll wait," he said, his voice a low, gentle rumble. "I'll wait for you to come back fully." After the confrontation at the bar, Derek vanished. He didn't just go quiet. He was gone. His phone went dead. The threatening videos stopped. The dark forum posts ceased. For 1 full week, there was nothing. The silence was louder than any of his threats. I tried to find a rhythm. I worked at Rosa's shop, which was now better than new. The windows replaced, the walls a fresh, hopeful shade of green. I spent my days surrounded by the smell of lilies and clean-cut stems. I went to my therapy sessions with Dr. Alani, where I was learning to untangle my guilt from Derek's abuse. I was doing the work. I was moving forward. But at night, the tension in the apartment was a living thing. Nico was not relaxed. He was preparing for war. He was on the phone constantly, his voice low, speaking in rapid Italian. Gio was a constant presence, his sharp, handsome face now drawn and serious. They were moving men, securing what Nico called his assets. And watching the Black Fangs, "He's a dog off the leash," Nico said one night, staring out the glass wall at the city below. "But the Black Fangs are holding the chain. His vanishing means they've pulled him back. They're deciding what to do with him. And with me," I whispered. He turned, his eyes dark. "They will not touch you. I'm making that very clear." But I was tired of being a chess piece. I was tired of being the target, the leverage, the victim. One night, I sat at the black, heavy typewriter he had given me. I had been writing just fragments, memories, but now I felt a new, cold clarity. I knew what I needed to say. I fed a clean white sheet into the roller. I typed. I didn't write about Derek. I didn't write about Nico. I wrote an open letter, anonymously. I titled it, Notes on Survival. I wrote about the small, daily terrors, the sound of a specific car engine, the way you learn to apologize for breathing too loudly. I wrote about the friends who disappear, tired of the drama. I wrote about the police who pat your hand and tell you he's passionate. I wrote about the moment you realize the cage isn't just his anger, it's your own silence. I wrote about the cigarette butt in my bed. When I was done, my fingers ached and my cheeks were wet. I hadn't even realized I was crying. I took the letter to the library and, from a public computer, I posted it to a local Red Brook community forum. I signed it simply, Jane. I went to work. When I got back to the apartment that evening, my old phone, the one I kept just for emergencies, was buzzing. Rosa was calling. "Leah, mija, you have to look at the Red Brook forum." "Why? What's wrong?" Just look." I pulled it up on Nico's laptop. The post was everywhere. It had been shared hundreds of times, but it was the comments. There were thousands of them. "This is my story. He did this to me. I thought I was the only one. I left my husband 3 months ago. I'm printing this and putting it on my mirror. I read this and I finally called the shelter. Thank you, Jane." My words, my pain. It wasn't just mine. It was ours. It was a chorus. I had done something. My voice, the one Derek had tried to silence, was now the loudest thing in the city. Nico came home late that night. He was in a dark mood, the kind that meant he'd been dealing with the ugly side of his world. He loosened his tie, his shoulders heavy. "You all right?" I asked. "I had a meeting," he said, his voice flat. He went to the kitchen, not for water, but for a bottle of whiskey. He poured 2 fingers into a glass, with a pair of detectives from the city force. My stomach went cold. Not Derek's uncle's friends? "The same," he said, taking a sharp sip. They heard I was looking for Voss. They heard he was a problem for my organization." He stared into the glass, his jaw tight. "They offered to make the problem go away." "What?" "What do you mean?" "A traffic stop gone wrong, an incident in the holding cell. They offered to eliminate him for a price." I stared at him. The old, dark, simple solution, the foundry, the end. It would be so easy. A part of me, the part that was still so tired, whispered yes. "They knew he was a problem when you filed your report," Nico said, his voice laced with a cold disgust. "They didn't lift a finger to help you then, but now that there's money on the table, now they'll act, not for justice, for a payday." I looked at his profile, the hard line of his jaw. "What did you tell them?" He turned, his dark eyes meeting mine. "I told them that if they ever came near me or you again, I'd have their badges. I told them this wasn't business." He put the glass down, his voice softening. "That's not your justice, Leah. That's just filth. Your justice has to be clean." He was honoring my choice, even when I wasn't there to ask him. He was trying, truly trying, to be the man I needed him to be. The anonymous letter took on a life of its own. Rosa, who had recognized my voice in the writing, showed it to a friend who ran a small, independent literary zine in the city. They wanted to publish it, and they want you to read it, Rosa said, her eyes shining. "At their monthly launch event. It's at a coffee shop downtown. Safe. Public." "Read it?" Out loud? My terror was immediate. I can't, I whispered. Yes, you can, Nico said from the doorway. He'd been listening. It's your voice. Leah, let them hear it. You're not Jane anymore. So I went. The coffee shop was crowded, filled with maybe 30 or 40 people, all artists and writers. Rosa was in the front row, beaming. I had my copy of the zine, my letter printed in stark black ink. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. The host called my name. And now, Leah Mendez. My name, not Jane. I walked to the small microphone. I looked out, and I read. My voice started as a whisper, thin and reedy, but as I read the words, my words, it grew stronger. I wasn't just reading my story. I was reading the story of the women in the comments. I was speaking for every crazy bitch who'd ever been told she was passionate. When I read the last line, but the silence is his, the voice is mine, my own voice was clear and steady. There was a second of absolute silence. Then the applause. It wasn't just clapping, they were standing, crying. Rosa was weeping, hugging me. A woman came up and just, took my hand, whispering thank you. It was the single most terrifying and validating moment of my life. And as I stood there, dazed and blinking back tears, I looked toward the back of the room. He was there. Nico. He was standing by the door, half hidden in the shadow, his arms crossed over his chest. He was in his dark wool coat, an island of stillness in the chaos. He hadn't been there when I started. He must have slipped in. He wasn't moving forward. He wasn't taking the spotlight. He was just bearing witness. Our eyes met across the room. He nodded, just once, and the smallest, proudest, most beautiful smile touched the corner of his mouth. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. He had seen me, not as a victim, not as someone to protect. He had seen me as me. We were quiet on the drive home. It was a new kind of silence, not tense, not heavy. It was full. The air in the car was electric. I was thrumming with the adrenaline of the reading, with the power of it. When we got inside the apartment, I didn't go to the guest room. I didn't wait. He had just closed the door, the lock clicking shut, when I turned and put my hands on his chest. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" His voice was low, rough. "You did that. That was all you... For giving me the typewriter," I whispered. For being there, in the back. I rose on my toes and kissed him. This kiss was not like the others. It was not tentative. It was not gentle. It was not a kiss of comfort. It was a kiss of choice. It was hungry, and it was sure. I wasn't grateful. I was equal. His hands came up to my face, his fingers tangling in my hair, and he kissed me back with a raw, desperate energy that matched my own. He had been holding back for so long, trying to be what I needed, and now I was showing him what I wanted. I pulled him, my hand in his, toward the bedroom. His, not mine. The room was dark, lit only by the vast, glittering grid of the city. I turned to face him, and slowly, deliberately, I unbuttoned his shirt. My hands were steady. I pushed the fabric off his shoulders, my fingers tracing the hard lines of his chest, the faint, pale line of the bullet graze. He was watching me, his eyes black with a mixture of desire and awe. He was letting me lead. I pushed him gently, and he sat on the edge of the bed. "Leah," he breathed, his voice thick. I put a finger to his lips. "Shh. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a survivor. Tonight, I was just a woman." I moved, straddling his lap, my legs on either side of his. I was looking down at him. I was in control. It was the most terrifying, empowering feeling. He put his hands on my hips, his grip firm, grounding, but he wasn't guiding. He wasn't taking, he was just holding me, accepting. This is for me," I whispered, my voice shaking just a little. "Yes," he said, his voice raw. "Always." I leaned down and kissed him again, slow, deep. Our bodies moved together, a rhythm of healing, of trust, of reclaiming the parts of me that had been stolen. It was a passionate, desperate, and profoundly vulnerable act. It was me, taking back my own body, my own choices, my own power, and he just let me. He held me. He worshipped me. He gave me the one thing I had never, ever had. He gave me control. The next day, Sal, Nico's tech guy, came by. He was vibrating with nervous energy. "Boss, Leah, I found him." We both froze. Not the burner," Sal stammered, tapping at his laptop. "He's been using the burner to talk to the Fangs, but he's stupid. He must have been nostalgic. He turned on his old phone, the one he used to use. It was only on for maybe 10 seconds, but it was long enough to ping a tower. I got a lock." "Where?" Nico's voice was flat. Sal swallowed. "A warehouse by the docks. It's a known Black Fang safe house. He's in their house. Boss, he's staying with Spike, their lieutenant." Nico went still. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. "He's their guest," Nico said, his voice a low growl. I can't just go in. Touching him there. It's a declaration of war." I looked at the screen, at the red dot on the map. "He's not their guest, Nico," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "He's their leverage. He's not staying with them. He's being held by them. He's a dog on their chain." Nico looked at me, a slow, cold understanding dawning on his face. "He's their pawn, and he's a liability," I continued, the pieces clicking into place. "He's unstable. He's making them nervous. I want this to end," I said, turning to Nico. I meant it. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. But I meant what I said. I want it to end with truth, not blood. If you go to war with the Black Fangs, it's your father's story. It's the Polaroid. More people will get hurt, and he'll have won. He'll have made you the monster he thinks you are. The words hit him. I saw the conflict in his eyes. "How, Leah?" he asked, his voice strained. "How do we end this with truth when he's in a snake pit?" "We don't attack the pit," I said. We lure the snake out. You said he's dealing arms. He's trying to prove his worth to them, right? So let's let him." Nico's eyes sharpened. The boss was gone. The strategist was here. "An informant," he said. "We have an informant in Spike's crew. Low level, but he listens." He made a call. He spoke in Italian. His words clipped. Hard, he hung up. "You're right, he's desperate. He's trying to broker a new deal, small arms, to prove he still has connections. So we make a deal," I said. Nico looked at me. A dangerous, slow smile spreading. "We set up a sting. My men will be the buyers. We get 'em, on tape, with a trunk full of illegal firearms. We give that tape, not to the local cops, but to the feds, the ones who are already building a case against the Black Fangs. We don't just get Derek, we give them his new friends, too." It was perfect. It was our justice. The night of the sting was the worst night of my life. I was in the apartment, pacing. I had never felt so helpless. Nico was in a car, 2 blocks from the meet, a warehouse in the industrial district. Gio was leading the buy team, wired for sound and video. My burner phone, the one Nico gave me, sat on the counter, silent. At 10:17, it rang. I snatched it. "Nico? It's going down," he said. "He's here. The informant was good. He's in the car. Gio is approaching." "Be careful," I whispered. "Always." He hung up. I stared at the city. My heart was a drum. I counted 60 seconds, 120. The phone rang again. He's gone. The words were flat, devoid of emotion. "What?" I whispered. What happened? He never got out of the car. He got spooked, saw something. Maybe the informant was playing us all along. He just hit the gas, drove right through the barricade. He's gone. Leah, he's in the wind." The line went dead. An hour later, the apartment door opened. Nico walked in. He looked. I had seen him angry. I had seen him cold. This was different. He looked broken. He looked like the man in the Polaroid, the one who had lost. He didn't look at me. He walked straight past me. Into his study, I followed him. "Nico." Crash. He had smashed his fist into the drywall. A spiderweb of cracks radiated from the new hole. His knuckles were raw, split, bleeding. "I had him!" he roared, turning on me, his eyes wild with a fury I had never seen directed at me. "I had him. I tried to do it your way. I tried to be clean. And he's gone. If I had done this my way, if I had just sent a team, he'd be, you would be safe." He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at himself. He had tried to be the man I wanted, and in his mind he had failed. He had failed to protect me. I didn't back away. I didn't flinch from his rage. I walked toward him. He was a wounded animal. I took his hand, the one that was bleeding. It was trembling with adrenaline and rage. "Nico," I said, my voice quiet, firm. He was staring at the wall, at his failure. I lifted his bleeding, shaking hand to my lips, and I kissed his broken knuckles. He froze. His head snapped toward me, his wild eyes full of a stunned, raw disbelief. "You didn't fail," I whispered, holding his gaze, holding his hand against my cheek. "He ran. That's what cowards do. But you did it. You held back. You didn't start a war. You didn't become him." I took his hand and I placed it flat against my heart, so he could feel its steady beat. "You are not who you were," I said, my voice fierce. "Don't you dare forget that. Don't you let him make you that man again." His breathing slowed, the rage in his eyes receded, replaced by that deep, aching vulnerability. He slumped, resting his forehead against mine, his eyes closing. He just breathed. He was quiet for the rest of the night. He tended to his hand in silence. He was thinking, plotting. I woke up at 3 a.m. The bed beside me was empty. I got up, my heart seizing. I found him in the kitchen. He was dressed, all black. Jeans, Henley, boots, the man who had walked into my diner. The predator. "Nico?" I whispered. "Where are you going?" He turned. His face was calm. All the rage, all the conflict was gone. He was settled. It was terrifying. "To end this," he said. "No," I pleaded, grabbing his arm. "Nico, not blood. You promised, not blood." He put his hand over mine, his eyes holding mine. "Not blood," he promised, his voice soft. "Truth. But my kind of truth." He kissed my forehead. "Go back to sleep. Leah, it'll be over soon." He slipped out of the apartment, silent as a shadow. He found the car, the one Derek had used to flee. It was ditched in a dark, wet alley by the rail yard. He didn't plant a bomb. He didn't cut the brake lines. He just opened the door when he took a single, elegant matchbook from his pocket, the one from the steakhouse where he'd put Derek in his place. He left it on the dashboard, right where Derek would see it, inside, on the crisp white paper. He'd written 2 simple words. Tick, tick, the fuse was lit. It was my apartment, not Nico's guest room, not his high-tech, glass-walled fortress, mine. It was a 1-bedroom on the 7th floor of an old, decent building uptown. It had hardwood floors that creaked and a radiator that hissed, and it was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. Nico had found it. His real estate connections had secured it, but the lease was in my name. The paycheck from Rosa's Blooms, which was now thriving, paid the rent. I had been here for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of sleeping alone. It was a choice, a necessary one. I had to know I had to prove that I wasn't just safe because a powerful man was sleeping in the next room. I had to build my own walls. Nico understood. He didn't fight me. He just helped me move. He'd assembled my cheap bookshelf, his large, calloused hands surprisingly gentle with the flimsy particle board. He'd kissed me, a long, slow, deep kiss at the door, and left. He called. He sent flowers to the shop. He was dating me. The tick-tick of the matchbook had worked. Derek was a ghost. Nico's contacts said the Black Fangs had cut him loose the second he was no longer useful. Terrified that whatever trap Nico had set for Derek would catch them, too. He was cornered, and I knew, with a sick, cold certainty, that a cornered animal was the most dangerous. I was coming home from the shop, a bag of groceries in one arm, my keys in my hand. It was just after 8 at night. The hallway quiet and smelling faintly of old carpet. I turned the corner from the elevator, and he was there. He was leaning against my door, as if he lived there. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it was ripped from my chest, but I didn't scream. I didn't drop the bag. I just froze. It was Derek, but it wasn't. The man who had terrorized me was gone, replaced by this shell. He was thin, his skin a pale, waxy gray. His eyes were bloodshot, darting, paranoid. He was vibrating with a frantic, desperate energy. He looked pathetic. "Lee," he breathed, and the name on his lips was a violation. He pushed off the door, taking a step toward me. I took one step back. My hand was in my coat pocket. My fingers found the burner phone. "You're hard to find," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "What do you want? Derek?" My voice. It was steady. It was cold. It didn't belong to the girl from the grill. "What do I want?" He laughed, a high, cracking sound. "What do I want? You ruined me, Leah. You and that wop. He set me up, the fangs. They think I'm a rat. They're hunting me. You did this to yourself," I said, my voice hardening. My fingers in my pocket, pressed and held the number 1. The call connected. I didn't lift it to my ear. The line was just open. Nico would be listening. "I did this!" he shrieked, taking another step. I held my ground. "I did this for us. I was making a score. I was getting us out, and you went and found him. You left me. After everything. After Ben?" I said, and the name just hung there. His face contorted. You don't say his name. That was your fault. You were screaming. You know you were." "I know I was 19, I said, my voice like ice. "And I know you were drunk." The truth, spoken so plainly, seemed to shatter him. He lunged. It wasn't a hit. It was a grab. His hand, thin and cold as a claw, wrapped around my wrist, the same wrist. "You're coming with me," he hissed, his eyes wild. "I have my car. We're leaving Redbrook. I'll fix this. I'll make them see. But you're coming with me. You owe me." He yanked me. The grocery bag tore. Apples and a loaf of bread thudding onto the carpet. I didn't fight. I didn't pull. I just planted my feet. "No. Derek," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "I'm not going anywhere with you. Ever again." He raised his other hand, his face twisting into the old, familiar mask of rage. He was going to hit me. Ding. The elevator doors slid open at the end of the hall. Derek froze. His hand was still raised. Nico stood in the elevator, not even breathing hard. He was in a black suit, his tie a perfect dark knot. He looked like death and salvation, all rolled into one. Derek let go of my arm. He shoved me, hard, toward Nico. She's crazy. I was just talking to her." He turned and bolted for the stairwell. I heard his feet pounding on the concrete, echoing up. I was breathing hard, my body finally catching up, the adrenaline making my knees weak. Nico was at my side in 2 long, silent strides. His hands cupped my face, his dark eyes scanning me for any hurt. "He touched you." "I'm okay," I panted. He's running." "He can't run," Nico said, his voice a flat, deadly calm. He'd heard it all. "He's going to his car." He put his hand on my back. "Stay here. Lock your door." "No," I said, grabbing his arm. I'm coming. I need to see this end." He looked at me, at the new, hard resolve in my eyes. He nodded, once. The parking garage was cold and damp, smelling of oil and concrete. We'd taken the elevator. We could hear Derek, 2 levels below. His footsteps frantic, his keys jangling. We stepped out onto the P2 level. He was there, scrambling toward his car, the same busted-up sedan he'd had for years, the one with the matchbook on the dash. He got to the driver's side, fumbling with his key, and he stopped. He'd seen him. Nico was already there. He was leaning against the car's trunk, as if he'd been waiting for him all night. He was perfectly, terrifyingly still. Derek was trapped. He looked at Nico. He looked back at me, standing near the elevator bank. He was a rat, caught between the trap and the light. My heart was pounding. The old instincts were screaming at me to run, to hide. I felt my feet take a half step back, my body instinctively moving to put Nico between me and the threat. I was hiding behind him, just like I always had. Nico saw it. He didn't move. He didn't look at Derek. He just waited. Then he slowly pulled a single cigarette from a silver case. He put it to his lips. He flicked a matching lighter, the click-snap echoing in the garage. He lit the cigarette, the cherry glowing in the dim light. He took a long, slow drag. He looked, not at Derek, but at me. I was peering from behind the pillar, my body still shaking. He spoke, and his voice was so gentle, it was almost a caress. "Why are you still afraid?" The question hung in the cold air. He looked at me, his eyes full of a deep, patient love. He's already lost, Leah. He was right, I felt. The fear didn't vanish, but it settled. It became something I could hold, something I could manage. I took a breath, and I stepped out from behind the pillar. I stood on my own. Nico smiled, a small, proud smile. Then he turned to Derek. The gentleness was gone. His voice was the sound of a vault door closing. "It's over, Derek. You can't touch me," Derek stammered, his eyes wide. You'll start a war." "War?" Nico let out a short, cold laugh. "There is no war. You're friends." He took a step away from the car. "The feds are wrapping up Spike's operation as we speak. The rat they were hunting was their own informant. My informant, the one who told me you were here, tonight. Desperate and stupid. You have no one. Derek, you have nothing." Derek's face crumpled. It was the face of a man who had just seen the last door slam shut. Me. Nico agreed. He took his phone from his pocket. Not a burner, his real one. He held it up. "But now, you're going to talk to me. You're going to tell me everything." "Go to hell." Nico took one step toward him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lift a hand. He just moved. "I gave you a choice at the bar, Derek. I told you what would happen if you touched her again." He let the memory of that threat, the ashtray, hang in the air. "Now, you have a new choice. You can talk to me, right now, and I will hand this tape to the Red Brook police. You'll go to prison. It will be unpleasant." He took another slow drag of his cigarette. "Or you can stay silent and I will walk away, and I will send a copy of this conversation to what's left of Spike's crew. I'll just let them know who is here, talking to me, right before the feds kicked in their door. I'm sure they'll believe you're innocent." He smiled, a smile with no warmth. "You can have the cops, or you can have the Black Fangs. Your story now." Derek started to cry. It wasn't a roar of rage. It was a pathetic, sniveling, weeping. It wasn't my fault," he sobbed. "Ben, she was yelling. She was always yelling. I looked away for a second." Nico just held the phone. "And the bomb. It wasn't real," he lied. "The bomb, Derek." Nico's voice was like stone. "It was just to scare her, to get her to see. I didn't mean to. The videos, the stalking, the break-in. Say it." And he did. It all came out. A full, pathetic, whining confession. A river of poison, years in the making. He admitted to everything, blaming me, blaming Nico, blaming his uncle, blaming the world. But he admitted it when he was finally done. A spent, shaking husk of a man. Nico stopped the recording. The sound of Derek sobbing filled the garage. Nico didn't look at him again. He just turned his back on him. He walked over to me, his face calm. He held the phone out to me. "Your story now," he said again, his voice soft. I looked at the phone, at this weapon, this key, this ending. My hand was shaking, but I took it. As my fingers closed around it, headlights swept the entrance ramp. A patrol car, its lights off, rolled quietly into the garage. 2 officers got out. They were young, their faces unfamiliar and serious. "We got a call," the female officer said, her hand on her sidearm. Nico nodded at her. "Polite. We've been expecting you." Derek saw them and just crumpled. He slid down the side of his car, his hands over his face. "Officer," I said, and my voice was clear. It didn't shake. I stepped forward, holding the phone. "My name is Leah Mendez. This man is Derek Voss. He's been stalking and harassing me for over a year. He just confessed to everything, including planting an explosive device at a city bus stop." The officer's expressions hardened. They looked at the phone in my hand, then at the weeping man on the ground. His uncle, Officer Voss. "He's no longer on the force," Nico added, as if commenting on the weather. "He took an early retirement, very early. There's no one to make this go away." The tape was enough. The confession was absolute. They pulled Derek to his feet, cuffed him, and read him his rights. He didn't fight. He was just empty. The district attorney wanted to throw the book at him. Attempted murder, terrorism, stalking, witness intimidation. Miss Mendez. He'll be put away for 30 years. Easy. I sat in the hard plastic chair in the brightly lit office, Nico's hand resting on my shoulder. 30 years, I repeated. I thought of him, old and gray, in a cell. It felt like his ending, not mine. "What if?" I said, my voice quiet. "I decline to press charges?" The DA stared at me. "Miss Mendez, this man is on a few conditions," I interrupted. "I want a lifetime, ironclad order of protection, and I want him committed, not to a prison, to a psychiatric facility, a secured one. I don't want him punished. I want him gone. I want him in a place where he can't hurt anyone else, and he can't hurt himself, until a board of doctors, a real one, agrees he is no longer a threat." The DA looked confused. He was a man of laws, of wins and losses. Nico squeezed my shoulder. "There is an excellent facility upstate, Vessa," he murmured, his voice just for me and the DA. Very quiet, very thorough. "I'm sure they would be happy to accommodate Mr. Voss for as long as it takes." The DA, understanding a different kind of power, nodded slowly. I think we can arrange that. It was justice, not revenge. It was a real ending." We walked out of the police station as the sun was beginning to touch the sky. The city was washed in a pale, clean, morning light. It was the first time I had breathed the air of this city and not felt like I was prey. We stood on the steps. "So," Nico said, his voice soft. He looked at me, his dark eyes searching my face. "What now? Leah, what do you want?" I looked out at the street. People were running for buses, grabbing coffee, living. I turned to him, and a real, genuine smile touched my lips. "I want to stop running." He nodded, a slow, deep understanding. He took my hand, lacing his fingers with mine. His skin was warm. "Then let's build something that stands still." The apartment was filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes. It had been 6 months. 6 months of quiet. 6 months of healing. Nico was in my kitchen, a dish towel slung over his shoulder, stirring a pot of sauce. He was wearing jeans and a soft, dark sweater, his sleeves pushed up. He looked happy. He looked like a man, not a boss. There were no guards, no shadows, no car idling across the street, just us. I came up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist, resting my cheek against the warm wool of his back. "It smells amazing," I murmured. He leaned back into me, covering my hands with his. "It's my grandmother's recipe. Don't tell anyone." I laughed, a sound that was easy and bright in the warm kitchen. He turned in my arms, and his mouth found mine. A slow, lazy kiss that tasted like wine and safety. Later, after dinner, I was at my desk. The typewriter was there. Beside it was a small stack of the zine, the one with my Jane letter. I was feeding a fresh sheet of paper into the roller. I had a new story to tell. I heard him before I saw him. He came up behind me, silent. His arms wrapped around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. He just held me, his warmth enveloping me as I sat in the chair. He kissed my neck, a slow, gentle kiss that made me stop, my hands hovering over the keys. "What are you writing?" he murmured, his voice a low rumble against my ear. He read the few lines I had on the page. "Happy ending?" he asked, his voice soft, a hint of a smile in it. I stopped. I looked at the white page, at the black, permanent letters. I covered his hands with mine, latching them on my heart. I leaned my head back against his chest, breathing in the scent of him. I smiled. I turned my face, just enough to look at him. "No," I whispered, "just a real one." Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where in the world you're listening from, so please drop a comment and say hello. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories so you never miss a new chapter. And finally, let us know what you thought of Leah and Nico's journey in the comments in English.